Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar about ChatGPT and other generative AI technologies. I want to welcome you on this webinar, but still we will wait for a couple of minutes for everybody to join us, and then we will officially start. In the webinar series, I would like to extend a warm welcome to today's webinar, Learn to Harness ChatGPT and Other Generative AI Technologies with Jeff Felice, CERT Nexus President. My name is Elena Dimovska, Data Analyst and Product Owner of the official CERT Nexus AI Academy in SEMOS Education. And I would like to introduce you with today's agenda. So we're starting with a little introduction for the hosts of this webinar, SEMOS Education and CERT Nexus. Then I will welcome Valentina Taseva, CEO of SEMOS Education. And last but not least, I will let Jeff Felice guide you in the field of generative AI. Meanwhile, you can ask questions and in the Q&A session, and after the presentation, we can answer your question in a Q&A session. At the very beginning, let me introduce you with the organizers of this event, SEMOS Education and CERT Nexus. CERT Nexus is a vendor-neutral certification body providing emerging technology certifications and micro-credentials for business, data, developer, IT, and security professionals. CERT Nexus' mission is to assist closing the emerging tech global skills gap while providing individuals with a path towards rewarding careers in AI, in artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, data ethics, Internet of Things, and cybersecurity. While SEMOS Education's main task is developing a wide range of courses designed for various end users with a different level of computer technology knowledge. SEMOS Education develops a system of computer education as an informal education which elevates the rank of the computer education for 28 years. Together with the learning system, which is developed continuously, SEMOS Education is coordinating and organizing a system of knowledge certification regarding the international certification system. And SEMOS Education is a complete educational service in the IT field, as well as other areas like management, marketing, etc. These outstanding features gives us credibility as a cutting-edge IT training center to make a distinctive mark in the field of artificial intelligence with our exceptional curriculum and well-experienced instructors. So we have many AI trainings and certifications, of course, in cooperation. Some of them are in a cooperation with CERT Nexus. For example, we have the Artificial Intelligence Academy, which is official CERT Nexus program, where from the beginning you can learn Python as a foundation of machine learning, then artificial intelligence and machine learning in its foundation. Then you can learn more about PyTorch and deep learning with NLP. At the end, as an expert, you can finish this program, this academy, with certified artificial intelligence practitioner, which is CERT Nexus, of course, course. We have short courses, for example, certified artificial intelligence practitioners, which are where the target audience for this course are at expert level. So the outline of this course is, as you can see on this slide, solving business problems using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Then you can learn more about the machine learning models, and of course, at the end, you can take the exam and earn a certificate from CERT Nexus for artificial intelligence practitioner. We have AI Ready as a program, which is actually combined program from different models of CERT Nexus and logical operations. And we offer, of course, knowledge where you can learn more about, of course, Python, then mathematical foundation for AI and machine learning, and artificial intelligence in its core and machine learning fundamentals, deep learning with Python. You can work on a real project, and you can have more knowledge about career planning and, of course, this development. And we have more AI in creative industry. So we have our course Designing with AI, where you can learn more about Adobe Sensei, Adobe Firefly, then Midjourney, and you can use artificial intelligence in the creative industry. So we have different courses, and I'm glad to announce that also the new course of CERT Nexus, Generative AI, we can offer to our enrollees, to our audience, and you can learn more about generative AI, ChatGPT especially, of course, and you can learn more on this webinar about those generative AI approach, of course. And as we set forth on this intellectual expedition, let's keep in mind that the pursuit of knowledge is a collective endeavor, one that thrives on collaboration, curiosity, and the exchange of ideas. So I encourage each of you to actively participate. Of course, you can ask some questions in the Q&A session, and together we have the opportunity to demystify AI, illuminate the complexities of generic AI, and emerge as informed advocates in an era defined by artificial intelligence. Once again, welcome to today's transformative webinar. And now I want to welcome Valentina Taseva, CEO of SEMAS Education, to make one welcome note.
Thank you, Elena. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar that will cover one of the latest trends in modern technology, artificial intelligence. I'm delighted to be hosting this webinar together with Mr. Jeff Felice, President of our respected partner, CERT Nexus. My name is Valentina Taseva. I am CEO of SEMAS Education, and we are one of the biggest IT training centers in Southeast Europe. Year by year, for 20 years now, we are implementing and sharing knowledge, covering the most modern technologies in 24 countries worldwide till now. These days, it is very, very exciting for us. We learn, we share, we promote, we talk, we demystify, as Elena said, about artificial intelligence and all its aspects, a world-changing trend that is shaping lives and businesses. It's coming to be everywhere around us, transforming every aspect of our lives. We say about ourselves, we are dreamers who do. We always stay up to date with technologies. We are happy to share the incredible opportunities that AI offers. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Felice. Jeff, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valentina, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. It's Valentina and Elena shared with you. We're going to talk about ChatGPT and other generative AI technologies. And again, this is intended to be an overview. As Elena shared with you, there's a number of programs that take this topic and others around artificial intelligence and related technologies into greater depth. But it is to give you a snapshot of generative AI technologies. So as Valentina and Elena introduced, myself, I serve as the president of CERT Nexus. And again, if you have any familiarity with CERT Nexus, we're a global certification body focused on vendor neutral technologies, artificial intelligence being one of those. So what are we going to discuss today? First, we're going to define what generative AI is. We're going to discuss what generative AI, how it is augmenting human tasks. We're going to talk briefly about what makes a good prompt and what a prompt is. We'll deliberate the ethical challenges briefly, and then we're going to consider what's next for generative AI, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end as well. So first, let's define generative AI. But before doing so, we need to define what artificial intelligence is. Although it's still a somewhat debated definition, it's commonly agreed upon that artificial intelligence is the ability of machines to exhibit human-like intelligence. So this is an ability for machines to work in an autonomous fashion where they can do things like make predictive outcomes around data intelligence. They can help in our physical space operate robots in an autonomous fashion. But essentially, if you break it down, it's the ability for a machine to do something that we as humans can do, but it does it in an autonomous fashion. That's what artificial intelligence is generally accepted to be. And generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence. Now, many of you may think of generative AI as being ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a platform, a generative AI platform that was released from OpenAI. It's since been licensed and adopted by a number of organizations like Microsoft, Salesforce.com, and a number of others. But ChatGPT is, again, is just one platform of generative artificial intelligence. There's many others from, for example, Google. They have Bard. They also have their image generator, Imagen. OpenAI also has an image generator, DALL-E or DALL-E 2. There's image generators from other companies like Stable Diffusion. And then Meta, the parent company to Facebook, has actually released their generative AI model, Llama, which is also now publicly available, and in fact is an open source model as well. So what do all these models do? Well, simply what a generative AI model does, it allows you to input some type of content of what we call a prompt, and it outputs a novel, what we call novel content, is new content. So whether that's text, images, video, audio, code, etc. Essentially, we have the ability, again, to input something and that model will output something. Now, one thing that we need to know is it's just not regurgitating or repeating information that it's been trained on. It's actually taking that information and it's actually creating new content, what we call novel content. So the answers are something that you should not find exactly anywhere else on the internet. It's essentially a model that's been trained on that information, but again, is providing new content. And we'll actually look at a generative AI model in a moment. But before doing so, I want to make sure that everyone's aware that generative AI is advancing artificial intelligence, but we still have what we call narrow artificial intelligence, or narrow AI, which we see on the right-hand side. So what is narrow AI? Well, it's the ability for artificial intelligence to approximate what we can do as humans cognitively, but it has no capacity for reasoning, right? If even as sophisticated as ChatGPT is, it doesn't understand why it's providing the responses it does, other than it's been trained to do that. It also can only solve typically one or a few designated problems. So again, as sophisticated as ChatGPT or Bard from Google is, when you input text, you can only get text back from those models. Those specific models can't produce images, they can't produce videos, audios. There's other generative AI models that can, but those models cannot. And they can't also operate in our physical space, right? They're not essentially operating robotics, etc. So that's why we call it narrow intelligence. Essentially, we have these really capable models, but are really able to do one thing, although they do it extraordinarily well. And that's our current reality. General artificial intelligence, or general AI, is, some say we may achieve this in the next 5 to 10 years, some say we may never, but this is where artificial intelligence has this similar or better cognitive abilities than we do as humans. It does have some ability to extrapolate reasoning, and it can solve multiple problems. So right now, Google DeepMind, if you're familiar with DeepMind, which is a division of Google, they have created a model Gato, or GATO, which is able to do solve some multiple problems. Again, it's very much a research model. It's not a production ready. but it gives us a hint that we may be able to achieve general artificial intelligence at some point in the future. So I just wanted to make that distinction because there's a lot of talk about is ChatGPT going to be, replace humans? And as we'll see, it's going to augment humans, but we're not at a point where artificial intelligence can replace what we do as humans. So let's discuss that, how general artificial intelligence is augmenting human tasks. And the first, we'll look across the organization. So generative AI is being used today. As Valentina shared, it's a relatively new technology. ChatGPT was released really for research purposes in November of this past year, but it's been quickly adopted and now being used for commercial purposes. And we're already seeing it impact the organization across sales and marketing, our product and development teams. It's also been included in development environments from organizations like Microsoft with GitHub and Google in their development environment. And they have models that are helping software engineers author code more expediently and of higher quality and be able to test it as well. We're seeing it in our customer operations, right? What a lot of people don't understand is that what ChatGPT and Bard, et cetera, they're really very sophisticated chatbots is what they are. So we're leveraging those foundational models to help drive some of our and help to automate some of our customer experience as well. And we're starting to see in other parts of departments in legal, talent management, finance, supply chain, et cetera. It is a technology that can be used across the organization. And what we'll see is, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a few moments, but we have the ability to output text. So ChatGPT is the model that we're probably most familiar with, but again, Bard is from Google is another one, and there are other models that are available as well. We have the ability to generate images. So again, we'll talk more about what prompts are, but you can see this is like a colleague of mine created these images through a model that outputs images, and you can see the prompt was a photograph of a monkey typing at a typewriter, wearing a small hat in an office, realistic and highly detailed. And this was the output that he received, 4 different images of exactly what his prompts were. We also have the ability to create video content. So this is a static example, but again, Meta, the parent company to Facebook, has created a model called Make a Video, and you can input a text. In this case, it's a teddy bear painting a portrait, and it's actually, it does that. It's a teddy bear painting a self-portrait. You can see the next one's a robot dancing in Times Square, et cetera, and you will actually see live video from these simple prompts. And we have the ability to do so much more, not only to output text and video and images and code, but we also have the ability to synthesize speech, 3D images, and there's a whole bunch of other applications we expect for this as well. But I know some of you may or may not have seen ChatGPT, so I thought what I would do is quickly demonstrate this. Typically, I have people, I ask for a topic, but I'm just going to do a topic here just to save time today. And I'm going to do, let's do something that is probably simple and something we all understand, but let's say how an electric car is manufactured, right? So I'm going to put this in there, and I'm inputting this into ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, again, what I just did is I generated a prompt. That prompt is actually essentially going to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is generating a response to that. And I'm not sure why it's taking a little bit longer than it usually does. I'm going to go to Bard to do the same thing, to say how is an electric car manufactured. And we're going to get a response here in a second. So Bard is the same thing as ChatGPT, and you can see I get a text output, right? So it talks about the acquisition of raw materials, component manufacturing, assembly, testing, distribution, et cetera. Again, this is all novel content. the way these models are trained, they actually have billions of parameters, in fact, hundreds of billions of parameters, essentially decision points, if you like, and they've been trained on essentially data that is just so immense that we can't really even conceive it as humans, but essentially they've gone out and scraped public websites with data and trained these models. So now when I ask this question, you can see it's presented that back to me. Now, what if I say, hey, I want to do how an electronic car is manufactured, but explain it to a young adult? So now what it's going to do, it's going to take that same information, which is, hey, we're going to explain how an automobile is manufactured, but now we're going to do it for a young person. So you can see it, say, instead of that, bulleted, response that we got up here that was much more formal and we would expect an adult to read, we can say, now let's say you want to build a car, right? So we talk about raw materials, an electric car and some components, etc. So now we actually have something that is specific to our audience, right? And so let's say, let's say I really meant not a electric only, but a hybrid car, a hybrid. And so now what it's going to do, again, what I'm doing is I'm getting more specific with my prompt, and I'm getting more specific information back. So now it's going to talk not only about electric vehicles, but now explain a hybrid car to a young person. So again, we have the ability to essentially continue to advance the model through what we call prompting. For those who haven't seen, we also have the ability to generate images. I'm a big cycling fan, so let's say a person cycling through the sunflowers of France, right? For those who watched the Tour de France a month ago. And so now what I'm doing is I'm actually generating image, right? I'm using text prompts, and I'm going to generate an image of a cyclist cycling through the sunflowers of France. And what if I say, hey, you know what? I don't want this to be photorealistic. Make it like a comic book like. And so now what it's going to do, it's going to take that additional prompt, and again, it's going to generate what we call novel content. These images don't exist anywhere on the internet. It's saying, hey, we're going to take essentially these prompts, a person cycling through sunflowers of France, and we're going to now make it comic book like, and you can see what we've done that. So again, these are just some simple prompts, but I did want to, for those who hadn't seen these technologies before, to see how they actually work. So I'm going to go back to our presentation, and again, we can demonstrate more during the Q&A if we have time for that. But I did want to make sure that at least you've seen these models if you haven't seen them before. So what you saw me do was just actually prompting. I was actually prompting those models to elicit a response. And this is what we call prompt engineering, which is the process of refining an input until it produces the desired output. So you saw I did that, right? I initially said, let's see how an electric car is assembled. We said, okay, you know what? Let's make sure we make it defined for an audience, which is a young adult. And then we said, well, you know what? Let's talk more about hybrid cars, not just electric plug-in only cars, right? So what I was doing there, I was going through a process of prompt engineering. Now, what we'll see is many of us will start to use prompting in our jobs. And then there will be jobs that are already being created, which are prompt engineers. They're individuals that are learning how to prompt these models to elicit the appropriate output. And that is their job in its entirety. But most of us will do this as part of our jobs. So what makes a good prompt? Well, first of all, we need to know that, again, many of us are going to be doing this, so it's going to be a necessary skill. We're all going to need to learn how to do this. And although there's no universal good prompt, there are some best practices we can all employ. So one is what I was doing there, right? Build a prompt iteratively, right? I started with one prompt, I built on top of it, and again, and you can continue to do that. Be descriptive, right? I was being very descriptive, right? With that image, I said, make it comic book-like, right? So now I said, not only did I want a general image, but I wanted something very specific. You need to be very clear in your instructions, right? So short, concise, and clear prompts are better than something that's more verbose. You can also start to provide relevant examples as well as part of your prompt. I didn't do that there, but I could have provided examples of what I wanted as the output. And you have the ability to save and reuse your prompts as well. Some additional best practices when we talk about text generation. Think about a persona. Who are you talking to, right? I was talking to a young child in the case of explaining how an electric vehicle, right? You need to know who you're talking to so you understand when you're generating text, it's appropriate for that audience. Write as clearly as you can. Ask for sources. You can do that, right? Because one of the things you want to know is, is this information accurate, right? And if you ask for a source, you will get at least where the source is, and you can further investigate that yourself. Know the model's restrictions. So if I was to go into these models and I wanted something specific, I know, and I'm just going to do this with ChatGPT really quickly, and hopefully it's back up and running for us. So I'm going to do a new prompt here and do a new chat. If I say, tell me what was the weather in 2022, you're going to see if it's going to be working, and if it doesn't, I'll tell you why. It's but ChatGPT, the public version, is built on ChatGPT 3, and you actually, the data it was trained on was through September of 2021. So you can actually not that's a restriction of the model when you're using the public version. Now the commercial version, which you license, you can actually ask for it for information, more current information, because it continues to be updated on new data. And keep trying until you get it right. So the fact is that you have to engage with the model. The model's not always going to get it right, but if you work with the model over time, you can get the appropriate response. But this is where our potential ethical challenges come into play. So just so we all have a foundational understanding, we think a lot about data ethics when we think about the use of data in artificial intelligence. And so data ethics, if you're not familiar, it's our ability to apply ethics to the creation, collection, and use of data. So AI ethics is a subset of data ethics. And this is where we apply ethics to data where algorithms are utilized. So anytime we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're talking about algorithms. And again, so the application of ethics to these algorithms is what we call AI ethics. So why do we need to be concerned with ethics with artificial intelligence? Well, the first thing that we have to remember is that for the first time, we have decisions being made by machines without direct human involvement, right? So that's, again, going back to the definition of artificial intelligence, it's that, right? It's artificial intelligence to do things that humans are able to do, right? So in this case, they're making decisions. So when a machine's making a decision, we also talked about it doesn't have any reasoning. Not only does it lack reasoning, but it doesn't have any moral compass, right? Artificial intelligence algorithm doesn't understand the difference between right and wrong. Now we can try to train it so it can understand the differences, but the fact is it doesn't have the same ability as we as humans to be able to engage with content or in a situation and determine, is this right or wrong? So when we think about AI, we need to think about how it's treating human beings, right? Because AI ultimately needs to not cause harm to humans, and then hopefully will improve the human condition. So when we think about ethics in AI, we think about 5 ethical principles. We think about privacy, right? So think about your privacy regulations like GDPR and similar regulations, right? We still need to ensure the privacy of the data, whether that's a personal identifiable information or intellectual property. We need to ensure that someone's accountable, right? We can't just produce something using ChatGPT or Bard or another generative AI model and say, well, that's what I got from the model. No, you as a human, you have to have a human in the loop, and someone has to be accountable for that. And it may be several people, but eventually there needs to be at least 1 or more humans that are accountable for that. We need to be transparent with our models as well. And this gets really difficult. Like, as I was sharing with you, these models, these generative AI models, have hundreds of billions of parameters and have extraordinarily huge volumes of data that they've been trained on. So when we think about that, we think about, gosh, we need to be able to explain how they're making their decisions. And that's one of the challenges we have right now, is that we don't always understand the decisions that are being made. In fact, I could actually work with some of these models and we get it, and you may have heard this, you get them to what they say hallucinate. It's not really hallucinating, it's really what they call confabulation, which is it starts to get its data essentially mixed up, and it starts to present information that is inaccurate and potentially even harmful. So we need to make sure that we understand why it's doing that. We need to make sure that these models are being fair and non-discriminatory, against people, environments, etc. And we need to do that based on how we train them, as well as how we use them. And ultimately, we need to ensure the safety and security of humans, other Earth inhabitants, the Earth itself, etc. And so in doing that, as part of our primary ethical principles. So what are some of the concerns of generative AI? Well, it's accuracy and truthfulness, right? Again, it doesn't know whether it's producing text that is right or wrong, or whether it's accurate or not. It's doing the best it can do based on how it's been trained. Now, these models do tend to, improve if it continue to be maintained. But the fact is, it's going to provide some inaccurate information. So again, like you would with any information you receive, you should fact check it, right? Is it correct or not? These models will can amplify existing bias and discrimination, right? We have a woman CEO in Valentina that's joining us today. The fact is, if you put a CEO in the DALL-E 2 and say generate an image of a CEO, 80% of the time it's going to generate a image of a male, even though women are 50% of our Earth's inhabitants and many of them are CEOs, right? So it will amplify potentially some existing bias and discrimination. We have to understand what's the data it's been trained on. As I shared with you, ChatGPT, the commercial or the public available version was trained on GPT 3.5, which again, the data, although some of it's of good quality, we need to understand where it came from, but also it's limited in the fact that some of it's almost 2 years old now, right? So we need to know the provenance, essentially the source of data and the quality of that data. We have to understand what's the impact on the workforce, right? So the fact is some jobs are going to move towards obsolescence. Many of our jobs are going to change. The World Economic Forum predicts actually there'll be a net new 10 to 12 million jobs, right? So we're going to gain jobs like we have with other technologies, right? You think about when the internet was introduced, when personal computers, mobile technologies, et cetera. In all cases, we've actually generated more jobs, even though we've displaced some along the way. We need to make sure we're not doing distribution of harmful content, right? It's easier than ever with generative AI to create deepfakes or other synthetic content, synthetic media. Again, we talked about the explainability and transparency. Legal compliance. The EU is leading the charge again, much like they did with data privacy. They're coming out with the EU AI Act in the coming months, which will start to regulate AI. Again, the goal is not to stem or reduce innovation, but it's to ensure that when we're all using this, that those of us that generate content, that we're protected through copyrights, data privacy, et cetera. And those of us that are using it know that we're not infringing upon other legal rights of other individuals or organizations, and that we're using this in hopefully a harmless way. And then we also, who's ultimately is responsible? Again, there may be a chain of people that's responsible, from those that created the models to those that are using them, to those that are receiving the outputs of those as well. So what's next? So the future of generative AI. The fact is the content's getting better and better. That's almost indistinguishable from human created content. So right now, there's a couple ways to tell if something has been generated by generative AI. One is generative AI typically creates content, at least text, that's equivalent, sentences that are equivalent in length. We as humans typically write sentences that are a short sentence next to a longer sentence, et cetera. Generative AI doesn't do that, so we went back and saw the output. In some ways you can tell. You can also, we're starting to see watermarking. Actually, Google just announced that they released watermarking for their image gen, which is their image generator. So people can start include watermarks, so others can see that when something has been created by generative AI, and we're probably going to see more and more of that as well. We're going to see it continue to augment and automate tasks, right? So we're going to see it as part of digital transformation initiatives where we're trying to automate some tasks or improve our performance related to them, whether that's from a productivity standpoint, quality standpoint, et cetera, through human augmentation. So we're going to see generative AI doing that. So again, if you're a marketing professional, you could see I could use Bard or a ChatGPT or a similar model to author a blog, a social post, an email, or potentially a white paper, et cetera. Right? So I still, as a human, are going to be doing the prompting, and I'm going to read through and probably tailor it to my audience. But again, I can get a good core or corpus of content that I can use as the foundation for that. We're going to see more personalized applications as we have with artificial intelligence in general. And again, improved communications with computers and other language speakers. The fact is these models, although originally trained on English language, are starting now to produce, and recently I just saw up into Google up into 1,000 languages now in dialects. So we have the ability to communicate with others, right? I was just traveling outside of the US in a country where I didn't speak the native language. And again, using Google Translate, I was able to communicate better than I would have without it, right? And these generative AI technologies are only going to further that as well. And we have to understand AI is the top priority for organizations. So I know a lot of us have been focused on data, whether that's visualizing data, data analytics, managing data through big data, and those are still important. And 1 out of every 4 executives in this SaaS survey reported, hey, these things are still important to us. But 1 out of every 2 said that AI is going to be their #1 priority over the next 2 years. So the fact is we need to skill up individuals across the organization. Again, this is really what's important to understand is that, again, this is not only a priority for the organizations, but organizations don't feel like they have enough people that understand the use of these technologies. Again, so SaaS in that same survey said 1 out of every 2 CEOs or executives said, hey, we're already using these technologies or plan to use these technologies. And the other half said we're going to do it over the next 2 years, right? So AI is going to be a ubiquitous technology, and generative AI a big part of that. The challenge is we don't have enough people to implement AI to either get it off the ground or to realize all the value when we do so. And what's unique about artificial intelligence and other data-driven technologies is this isn't just a job for IT. We think about our core infrastructure, such as our servers, whether it's a Windows server, a Linux server, or a firewall, or a router or switch. And again, we as business professionals expect those services to be provided us to by IT without our direct involvement. AI is going to be different because AI, we need to set the objectives for AI from the business. So if you're a marketing professional, what are the gains you're going to get from using generative AI? If you're using it as a sales professional, it is part of your CRM. If you're using it in legal to help generate legal documents. So you're going to have individuals from the various departments or divisions of an organization, they're going to be directly involved in this. So we not only have to have technical professionals like machine learning engineers and data scientists, but we also need to have individuals at the business level, whether it's the C-suite, or business stakeholders, product and project managers, program managers, et cetera, that need to have at least a foundational understanding. And that's where we get into our learning pathway. Again, if you just need to understand those foundational concepts, we have programs that are offered through SEMOS, such as our artificial intelligence for business AI Biz, Gen AI Biz, which is for our generative AI. We just actually launched that, went live yesterday. We also have for data ethics for business professionals, and those who are moving into a technical profession. You can see we can help build those foundational programming skills, the data science skills. AI is highly dependent on data, so you're going to have to understand how to manipulate and model data and engineer it for use within your models. You also use machine learning engineer in data science. And then for those that are going to go on to vendor-specific pathways, you have that capability as well. And you can see the certified ethical emerging technologists at the bottom. This is for those who want to go one step further and become potentially an AI or data ethicist, or maybe, again, heavily involved in employing these models and need to make sure that you're doing so in a responsible way for your organization. So in summary, generative AI, as we saw, used text prompts to instruct models to create novel content, right? So we saw that with text, images, video, audio. I didn't do a code example, but I could have done a code example. Again, one thing with code I want to note is that I can generate code, but if I'm not a programmer, I don't know how to implement that code into a development environment, then how to actually make, push that into a production environment, testing, et cetera. It's going to augment, not replace developers. Again, generative AI is being used pervasively throughout industry today and is rapidly gaining momentum. There's not any technology in modern times anyway that has actually gained as much momentum as quickly as generative AI has. Again, we looked at prompting briefly, and again, effective prompting requires some knowledge and practice, right? Again, we cover that in our Gen AI Biz course. We actually have you prompt various models, and you start to learn how to, again, be more iterative in your prompting, use examples, et cetera. We need to consider the ethical use of generative AI. Again, we're reliant on machines to make decisions, so we need to make sure those machines are trained in a way that they're going to produce outcomes that are responsible and for use of good and do not cause harm. And as we shared, that generative AI is a top priority. It's changing the skills we need to thrive. So regardless of where you are in the organization today, you're likely going to need to have some level of knowledge of generative AI and artificial intelligence in general to do your jobs. If you're not doing it today, you already may be using, all of us are using artificial intelligence. If you did a Google search today or a Bing search, or if you used autocomplete when typing a text or in an email, if you went out to a streaming service with a recommendations engine, or you bought an airline ticket, or a large online retailer that uses pricing models that use AI, et cetera, they call it dynamic pricing. Used your payment card, that's essentially the fraudulent activity is identified through AI. We're all using AI, whether we know it or not, but it's now going to become a bigger part of our jobs, and we need to be prepared for that as well. So with that, we're moving towards our summary in our Q&A. Again, I just wanted to share the breadth of certain Nexus programs that are available to you all through Semnos Education. So again, if you are interested in any of those foundational programs at our Think level, which is really intended for business professionals or those that are starting out on their technical employment journey, it's a great place for you to start. Or if, again, a business professional, it may be your endpoint as well, but a variety of topics across cybersecurity, IoT, data science, AI, and data ethics. And then for those who are going to move into technical professionals, such as a development, programming professional, an IT or security professional, we have those covered across our build and secure programs as well. So with that, I'm going to go to our Q&A, and I'll stop sharing so we can answer any questions that you have at this time. And I always say the first question is the best question because it gets us rolling.
Yes, Jeff, thank you. We have some questions here that are already published. So do you want to read for you? The first one is, if we use those AI generated images, shall we write the source from where that image was created? What do you think about this, about the authentication of the source?
Yeah, we should be very honest about the source of when we're using generative AI. If you saw my presentation, I actually had ChatGPT on the generative AI, the definition. I had ChatGPT cited because I actually wanted ChatGPT to define generative AI for me. So I do think we should be open and honest about that. And I think for two reasons. One is that it may be using other content that may be, again, not the exact same content, but source content. and we want to make sure that people understand that. And two is it does show you being forward thinking, right? That I am using generative AI tools, but I'm doing it in a responsible way. And part of that responsibility is being transparent in its use.
Thank you, Jeff. Should we use, there is one question here, should we use for business causes, for private causes, and maybe how do you think about the AI in the law, the implementation? Yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So there's actually a firm, and I'm sure there's others now, but there was one in the U.S., a larger law firm that stated that all of their base agreements were going to be created by generative AI, because so much of it was reused across agreements. But then they would always have a lawyer that would then modify those agreements to the specific needs of an organization, but they were going to use it. So I think we're going to see AI used widely in all professions, legal, anywhere we're generating content, we're going to see it. At the same time, we need to make sure, again, there's a human in the loop, that someone is reviewing those agreements, and also that ultimately it's when we do have regulations in place like the EU AI Act and other regulations, that they're also compliant with those as well.
Thank you for the answer, Jeff. We have one other question. How might generative AI develop in the future? I think that maybe through the presentation you have some answers on this question. Maybe you have a short comment on this.
Yeah, I think we're going to be surprised in its use, to be honest. I think the fact is that it's, you think about it, it's a technology that publicly is less than a year old. And it's been used for a variety of uses already, right? I mean, everything from writing poetry to generating music, to generating novel art, etc. I think some of that, the allure, kind of what I'll call the play use of generative AI will wear off. But what we're going to start to see is organizations really consider, hey, how does this essentially help augment the humans that are doing work in my organization, and how do we improve what we do as a business? And that's where we're going to see even more innovation in our business lives. And I think that's why I say it's really unknown yet, because again, we're going to see so many people trying to solve problems that that we have today in business, and whether generative AI will be a tool for that or not.
Yes, and this question is natively to the previous one. Where are we now with the generative AI? What are we doing at the moment? Yeah. In which stadium we are?
Yeah, we're really in the infancy of generative AI. I mean, artificial intelligence itself, although we use it so widely, is still what we consider an emerging technology. It hasn't realized its full potential yet. So, and generative AI is one of the newest forms of artificial intelligence. And what I would say is right now we've gone from this essentially what I would call essentially a research level of use to a starting to think about it, and now we're starting to see the initial applications. One thing we'll start to see with the applications of artificial intelligence, a good example of this is we're all going to see it in our everyday use of whether you're using Microsoft Office or the Google Office applications. And it's going to be integrated into those applications over the coming months, and we're all going to be users of it. It's going to come up as new features. And so the fact is that we're going to start to see its use more and more. But many times what we're not going to be doing is going out to these what we call foundational models like ChatGPT or Bard, etc. What's happening is companies are licensing those foundational models and building applications on top of them. So I mentioned Salesforce.com earlier. They've done that. They've essentially have licensed GPT-4, which is and they from OpenAI, and they've essentially using APIs have built hooks into that foundational model. But everything you do as far as prompting, et cetera, is through Salesforce.com. It's going to be the same thing with whether you're in Microsoft Teams or you're in Google Sheets, et cetera. You're going to not go out to the foundational model. You're going to just be doing your prompts in your application, and they'll be hooked. So we're going to see more of that. And we haven't yet really seen that proliferate the way we're going to see over the coming months and years to come.
Yes, and we have one last question at the moment, and I will rephrase it. What do you think about the security policies, the frameworks that the vendors have about securing the useness of AI? The question is all about misinformation and fake news, etc.
Yeah, so I have there's 3 points to the response. The first is that the fact is that these models are trained on information that's out there, so there is going to be some level of misinformation. So we have to fact check everything that we generate from these models. The second thing I want to note is that these models are what they don't do is they're not taking your inputs and then training the model with those. With that said, we as an organization, and we think every organization should not put their proprietary information as prompts into this. So for example, we talked about our certified AI practitioner exam. We would never take our exam items and input them into this model because those are proprietary items. And even though the model doesn't consume them and use them, we now have that, again, that data out in a public space. So what we need to understand is when you prompt, when I was doing those prompts, it wasn't training the model. They've already trained that separately and they continue to train it separately, but I'm still putting information that is now being essentially absorbed, by a third party, and we need to be aware of that as well.
Thank you, Jeff. It was an inspiring presentation, and thank you for demystifying generative AI. I would like we have a couple of minutes just to share with everybody that we have prepared a gift card. So everybody who wants to have and apply for a gift card for all our AI courses, where we have, of course, Nexus courses, you can apply for the card scanning the QR code that you are looking at the moment on this slide. So I will leave it like this for a couple of seconds just to have time to scan this code. And I want to thank you, Jeff, first you for the presentation, for all the answers that you give to our attendees, and of course, Valentina, for your welcome memo, for your welcome note. And I suppose that we will do more webinars like this in the future and make this collaboration great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we're closing now this webinar. See you in the next one in this webinar series. Goodbye, everybody.
Schnitt.